My name is Agustin Urquiles. I am the executive manager of School to Home, and it's great to see all of you. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this discussion. I know Cheryl has been very persistent, and she's been very eager to get your input, and I think at the end of the day, this is what other teachers really appreciate, is to have the very practical information that they can then take back to the classroom. So thank you very much for joining us and being part of this discussion. We really appreciate it.
And I'm really glad that it's being recorded so that if people couldn't join today, that they can actually go back and look at the archive.
Definitely. So we'll go ahead and make it available to our network of educators, where we reached out to administrators and what we refer to as professional learning and instructional leads at our school site. So I think they will definitely appreciate it, and I think it's very timely. So let me go ahead and begin. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to introduce our panel. As all of you remember, Cheryl's our evaluator who at the end of the last school year, when she was finalizing the evaluation report, identified all the progress that all of our school home sites have made, and also identified the fact, like so many other schools, the progress did need to improve in the area of math. So as we discussed in the last session, what we asked Cheryl to do was to really dig into the data and identify the schools that had defied the odds, if you will, and had seen a lot of positive progress, and we're very fortunate to actually have one of the school leaders from one of those schools, Principal Megan Traver, as someone that was a principal at one of the schools that showed great progress, and there's two other teachers as well. We have Eric Kabakunen. Am I saying that right?
Very close, Kabakungin.
Terrific. And then Melissa Savatsky as well. She's joining us as well. And then they're all from the area of Long Beach. And Cheryl is going to facilitate the conversation. But, the last session that we had, there was a lot of the research that Cheryl was sharing. This time we wanted to make it a little bit different. We wanted to make it a lot more interactive. We wanted to have practical recommendations for you to take back to your school. We'll have some breakout sessions where you can actually interact with the panelists. So we're very excited about today's session. So thank you very much. As far as the School to Home team, I also have Steve Morris is here. And we have Rosa Guerrero, who's also a team member, Elaine Carpenter as well. And we just are joined by our CEO, Sunny Wright McPeak. Sunny, do you want to say anything before we begin?
I just want to welcome everybody again. I so enjoyed the first seminar. This is terrific. This is also pioneering, as is School to Home overall. The focus on now this math initiative just adds another element to our commitment to education excellence for all students. So thank you. Thank you, Augustine.
Yeah, thank you, Sunny. And yeah, like I said, it's great to be able to showcase the talent that we have as part of our network and our partner schools, our partner districts. So I think that's what both administrators and teacher enjoy the most, or find the most useful, is to hear from one another. So let's begin with a discussion. So Cheryl, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can facilitate the conversation.
Thanks. Well, we really appreciate the panelists joining us today. They're the ones who are going to give you that practical example from their real life experience out in the field. I just want to quickly remind you about the the agenda that we have for today. We're going to do some introductions and opening remarks from the panel. So we'll give each panelist 5 to 6 minutes to really give you the context in which they're working and answer the question, how was their school able to beat the odds in math while working with underserved populations? Then we'll give the audience a chance to go into Mentimeter and add some questions that they would like the audience or the panelists to address. We'll do a bit of Q&A there. Then we'll come back and have the audience actually identify some distance learning challenges that they're up against. And again, come back and have the panelists look at those topics and share with us how they're addressing them. And then finally, we'll go into the breakout room. So let's get started. First of all, I just want to remind you of the high impact student learning strategies that we talked about earlier. These are part of the Common Core in California. And I'm not going to go over each one, but this is kind of where we're at about the mathematical mindset and really getting kids into deeply understanding conceptual and procedural mathematics. So what I'd like to do is to begin by asking Melissa to take about 5 to 6 minutes to talk about how you in your classroom are beating the odds in mathematics and working with those underserved populations to really make it happen and bring math alive for them. So Melissa, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Zavatsky. I work at Jefferson Leadership Academy in Long Beach Unified School District. So basically, math is pretty much my passion. It's always been my favorite subject. And I always would have this conversation. You know how some people say, oh, don't worry. You know, I never was really that good at math, right? Like, you don't need to worry about it. And I beg to differ, right? And as I'm sure many of us do here on today's Zoom call, because no one would ever say something like, oh, I wasn't really good at reading. You don't need to know that. That's okay. And that's always was my pet peeve. So really, when I meet my 6th graders every year as they're coming into middle school, I'm trying to change their mindset about mathematics and what it really is. And mathematics is really about problem solving. And it's really about tackling on things that we don't understand and trying to make sense of them. So a lot of the work that I do with my students is based on the standards of mathematical practice, of course. But my biggest focus that I feel like that I work on with my students every year is on communicating their understanding of conceptual understanding as well as procedural understanding. And the way that I do that is I tend to have students talk a lot or write a lot when it comes to math. It's not a matter of, I'm going to do 50 problems today, right? We may not even do 10 problems today. As long as we can make sure that we can go through the 3 or 4 difficult high-level questions and we can explain what we did, how did we tackle them, what were the things that we saw in the question, and then to also take in what other students are doing and other perspectives. Well, you know, maybe I would solve it like this or do something a little bit differently. And the importance of taking risks, the importance of sharing what you do know, even when you are stuck, because there's probably something that they do know. One of the things that I've really been relying on in distance learning is students, I give them only maybe 1 or 2 problems for homework, not a whole lot. And then I actually have them record a video of themselves explaining how they solved the problem. What did they do? And we use Flipgrid or we're a district that uses Canvas. So sometimes they use the studio and just record themselves and submit it to me that way. We're working with a lot of digital tools where we can provide feedback and collaborate with each other. And I think that the biggest thing is having children understand that what they're doing in math is really problem solving and making sense. And not necessarily, did I get the right answer? I don't want to know 4. I want to know, how did you get to 4? So that's pretty much my approach.
That's great. Could I just ask one follow-up question? I'm really curious about how you get these kids to take risks. You know, so many kids are so worried about whether or not they have the right answer and won't actually volunteer. So how do you get them to do that?
Generally, I'd like to give a lot of positive praise and feedback for taking risks. We start off the school year every year with a growth mindset kind of unit of study before we were like mini unit before we get started with anything else. And we revisit our growth mindset throughout the school year. I think that one of the things that I've taught my students when they're conversing with each other or when they're working in a group is to also praise each other for taking risks. I model that in our class discussions and within our small groups, which are now breakout groups in Zoom.
Great. And do your kids actually turn their cameras on and actually volunteer during the synchronous sessions?
They do. They do for the most part. But if they don't, we have a discussion about that. We talk about what people feel comfortable with, right? Some students would prefer to share and unmute and have their camera off, and that's okay. But maybe some students are feeling self-conscious about their home environment. Maybe they have a brother or sister that's learning close by them. And I tell them that it is okay, just as long as they're responding, just as long as they are actively participating, that any participation is good. So whether that's typing into the chat and sharing that way, when they're working on a collaborative assignment within a Jamboard, just so that to make sure that they are doing what they need to do and that they're participating in some way. Whatever they feel comfortable with is what I push for and give kudos to.
And one last question, just about the Flipgrid videos that you have your kids to see if they actually understand things conceptually. Do you have rubrics that you use to actually grade those to kind of see how they're doing, both from a presentation and communication style as well as kind of a content and conceptual style?
So what I do, I use Long Beach Unified kind of uses a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 scale of how we grade things. So I explain it to them at the beginning of the year, what I expect. So I give them an analogy of dinner. Your homework is make dinner for your family. And then I go through what a 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 is. So to me, the equivalent of a 1 is the assignment was dinner and they grabbed a crumple up granola bar from the bottom of their backpack and threw it on the table. And they were like, there's dinner, family. And you know what? That's not dinner. That's a 1. Okay. And then I talk about what a 2 is. And a 2 is, and I know this is silly, the whole analogy, maybe they walked over to 7-Eleven and they grabbed a bag of chips, put that on the table. It's better than the granola bar that was at the bottom of the backpack for a month, but it's still not dinner, right? And then we talk about a 3. A 3 is passing. A 3 is okay. And a 3 is, maybe I went to Little Caesars and I grabbed a pizza, 2-liter soda. That is actually dinner. Is it the best dinner we ever had? No, definitely not. But it works, right? And then we talk about a 4 and what a 4 is. And to me, a 4 is pretty gosh darn good, right? A 4 is going to be, they made me this spaghetti dinner and I have some like garlic bread and salad, right? That's a 4. And a 5 is exceptional. A 5 is your Thanksgiving dinner. Like it's the best meal that you look forward to every year. So I try to explain to them and I show student work samples from the past and currently that have names removed, of course, for anonymity, and to try to prove this is what a 5 looks like. You may have turned something in, you may have done the work, but is it really a 5? Is it really Thanksgiving dinner? And it gets them to shoot towards that, what that Thanksgiving dinner is.
Thanks. So it sounds like you really translate things into kid language and really draw them into that relationship. So thanks for sharing. Let's now turn to Eric. Again, the same question to you. What is it that you're doing in your school and in your math classroom particularly that helps you beat the odds with these underserved children?
I would like to supplement my answer with some Google Slides, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
All right, so
wait, before he starts, everyone, go Eric! Woo! Sorry, Melissa, I should have done this for you. I think we should give Melissa a round of applause. Woo!
Go Melissa! Woo!
Bring it home, Eric.
All right, so what I'm doing with our students is I've always had excellence at the forefront. I've always had excellence at the forefront of my mind. So I think students need that excellence now more than ever during this time, especially during distance learning. The stakes are just high. So the urgency to strive for excellence for our students is there. Again, the stakes are high. The students' learning environment has suddenly become virtual and it's limited to the walls of their home. So I focused on virtual strategies around 3 areas. And those 3 areas are engagement, accountability, and relationships. Now for engagement, the question was, how can I get students to interact with me through their devices? Because in person, I would interact with students daily. There was ongoing communication between the students and me, and even just between the students themselves. So there was challenges in doing that virtually. But here are the strategies I've practiced since distance learning has started. So I've used random selection, polls, Zoom chat, physical responses, so thumbs up or thumbs down, nod or shake your heads, hold up 1 finger to 5 fingers to show me how well you understood that concept that I just taught, interactive documents, so digital whiteboards. So Nearpod, for example, is something that I use a lot. I think that's a digital tool that is a high impact strategy. Verbal acknowledgements, rigorous tasks, and collaboration. I think when it comes to rigorous tasks, you can still do that. It's still very much possible during distance learning. I think that we still need to provide students the space to productively struggle. And that, again, is one of the high impact learning strategies that you had listed out in your slides. So it's easy for students to know the what, right? But do they know the why? Do they know why they have to take these steps in order to solve these math problems? So I give them that space to productively struggle and to collaborate with one another. For accountability, I have cameras on. So at the start of the school year, we had established that this will be our norm school-wide for cameras to be on. Because I believe, for example, that cameras provide a little sense of normalcy in the classroom. I really think that when we are teaching in person, the normalcy is that we get to see each other's faces. So virtually online, we don't want to be staring at black squares with our names on it, right? We want to be able to see our faces. And I told that to my students. I told them that and they understood it, and their cameras are on every single day. And I'm very proud of them. For accountability, I also use grade checks. Eventually I got back into this. So in person, I would hand them just a paper where they answer certain questions around how many zeros do they have? What are their grades for each of their classes? What are their missing assignments? You can still do this virtually online. You can give them this digital document, and I'll show you how that looks like. So here's a document that a student of mine had filled out. They were able to identify the percent of their classes. They were able to identify their letter grade. They told me the number of zeros that they have. This student, probably not the best example that I'm sharing, but this student is an A student, clearly, but I love him. So I'm sharing his example. I also present learning targets daily. So every time that I am at the very beginning, I present a learning target so they know what they are going to learn by the end of the class period. And I think that's important. I think that holds them accountable. So if they see what they're going to learn throughout the day, they're going to tell themselves, okay, I'm going to know that by the end of the class period. I need to know that by the end of the class period. So I need to focus on this. I need to focus here. And also formative assessments. I think that's important. I do formative assessments throughout the entire day. So I do that, and it could be something as simple as 1 or 2 questions, right? So we call those prove-its at our school, and we've called it prove-its at our previous school. So Megan and I come from Washington, and we've developed formative assessments that are called prove-its. And it's been and I would love to take 30 minutes to talk about it, but prove-its are really just short formative assessments that really measures what the students have learned in that day or in that period. And I also do individual check-ins with students. I just ask them how they are doing. Do you understand what you were just taught? And for teachers, so with my math department here at our school, we agreed and we committed to using certain engagement strategies. We agreed to using grade checks for our students. Again, we got to hold them accountable. And we also agreed on common formative assessments. We kept in mind that if we have common formative assessments, we can see what we're doing with our students, we can compare data, and more importantly, we can share effective practices. So here's an example of a learning target that I used today. So this is just identifying integers and fractions and decimals on a number line, and this also transitioned into talking about coordinate planes. So this is an example learning target that I presented today. Focusing on relationships, last area that I focus on. So I really check in with the students. I really ask them how they are. And I even do this individually. I go into breakout rooms when I see, and it's really hard to tell, right, on camera if your students are doing well, but I do meet with them in breakout rooms individually just to ask them how they're doing. I make positive phone calls home. I don't make a lot of phone calls home where I need to tell parents, oh, so-and-so hasn't had their cameras on or hasn't been turning in their work. I tell them of progress. Progress is what matters, and students thrive off of that. They thrive off of knowing that they've made the progress, and they will do better if they know that they're making that progress, especially from their parents. I do lunch or after school help or tutoring upon request. I provide space for students to share their stories. I do this throughout the day. I think students need a lot of mental breaks, right? They're sitting behind their computer all day long. So providing those mental breaks and just asking them about their weekend, asking them what they're planning on doing this upcoming weekend, and just giving them that space to really just talk to you, I think has helped. And lastly, I practice culturally responsive teaching. And this is a digital community building kind of activity that I do with my students. So this is on a Google slide, and students put their own names, and you have a mic. And so again, this is just a way for me, I do this weekly, by the way. So I have students we just talk about something other than math. So this is just an example. If you look at where it says topic or questions, the students just greet each other. This is where I kind of also embed how can we formally address each other. Students tell us how they're feeling from a rate of 1 to 5, and we play 2 truths and 1 fib. And the reason why I don't say lies because I don't condone lies, but 2 truths and 1 fib, and the kids love this. So this is just a way for them to get to know one another virtually online. So I use this, and this is done on a Google slide. So yeah,
That's great.
that is my segment.
Great. Let's give Eric a hand. Yay. That was so good. Thumbs up to you.
Hey, Eric.
There was a question in the chat about whether or not we could get a copy of the slides. So
No, that was from Sal Madrigal. So he's my friend. So the answer is no. I'm just kidding, Sal. I love you. Eric, will you share it with him?
I definitely will share it with you guys.
you know, there's this dynamic duo that was in Washington Middle School, and now they're in Stevens Middle School. It's Eric and Megan team. So
girl, I brought him with me. You know, I'm not going anywhere without Eric now. So
great. Let's hear from you, Megan. How did you beat the odds? What is that you do as a principal to really make math come alive in your school?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of overview. First, okay, let me give some kudos to Eric. I just want to tell you, like, he's the real deal. So everything he shared with you, he really does. And then he says, like, we're doing this community building, but it's really fast and efficient. He has such rigorous classes. So it's not like he's spending just a ton of time. How are you guys feeling? He intertwines it in really good, good rigorous classes. So he's legit. So everything he shared is just a real deal. So kudos, Eric. Okay, Eric, do you mind sharing my slides? See why I have to take Eric with me? Like, he's my right-hand man. Okay, so Eric and I worked at Washington Middle School. I was the principal there for 6 years. I believe that Eric was there for 5. We ranged anywhere from 1,000 to 1,300 students, given the year. We turned over about 200 students a year, which was, I mean, I hope you're gasping. It was a high amount of turnover. We were 99% free and reduced lunch, with 34% were language learners. And we were located in an area with the highest rate of crime, the lowest average income in the city. We basically had, like, every indicator that was a challenge, that's where Washington was. We were a highly compacted area around the school. We were just surrounded, like, just encroached upon by apartment buildings and people just all living so closely together and fighting for space. And it was just, it's a tough neighborhood. And our city's actually putting in a lot of effort to actually improve that area. Oh, and then also I just want to say that there was a strong presence of gangs, and that was something that was really, a challenge we had to work on. And I think I just want to give you some context before I show you the data, because when you see the data, I want you to understand that we had all these challenges going on at the time that we did all this. So what we did, I think, really worked. Okay, so this is just 3 years of data. We actually grew all 4 years, but this is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then on the right, overall, it's how many students met or exceeded the standards in math on the SBAC. So as you can see, I mean, we started at 15%, and in 2 years later, we were at 36%. We doubled. I think we went up to about 40%. And then this, I just want to say, because what we were doing school-wide was working, it happened in ELA as well. So same thing, we started at 18% and we went up to 32. And I think we were in the mid 30s by the time, the 2 years ago.
And it's all about progress, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can see, I think what was really impressive is that at every grade level, every single year, they made progress. So what I like knowing is that the longer they were at our school, the better they got in their academics, which is really exciting.
Great. That's terrific. Good.
And then I have a hope, like I have like 10 slides. Okay. So, and then the other thing is we wanted to look at the DNF rates, and because we went to scaled grading. So I want to give a shout out to scaled grading. We talked about the power of the zero. This took years. But we had 100% of our teachers use scaled grading, which is a modified grading system. F's don't bring you down, zeros don't bring you down as much in a scaled grading system. And everybody was worried like, oh, if this is easier grading, will that demotivate the students? And what we found is that D's and F's went down. And as you saw in the last two slides, the academic achievement went up. So we actually found it was more motivating to be more gracious with our grading. So just something else I just want to, I feel like I'm showing off, but what I want to do is I want to tell you that like this stuff worked, and this is how I know. So we were only one of 4 schools out of 84 schools in the Long Beach Unified School District to meet the district growth goals in both ELA and math all 4 years in a row. And we were the only secondary school in Long Beach to achieve that distinction. So it was like just an incredible couple for like 4 years of just people working so hard and working together. We really made the magic happen. So now I'm going to share with you what we did. Okay, so this is the secret sauce that Cheryl's asking about. So this is just in a nutshell, I only have like 5 minutes to share with you, but if I had to identify a couple key things, it's really important to build leadership capacity as a school site leader. So what I did is I broke this down on this slide. So I believe the principals should really nurture the leadership of the department heads and grade level leads, depending on what level you're at. And then the principals should also invest time in their assistant principals and TOSAs to help make them leaders. And then just for everyone, like assistant principals and TOSAs, then build leadership capacity with teachers, and so do department heads and grade level leads. I hope that makes sense. What it is it's basically everybody's in charge of building the leadership capacity of everyone else. And the reason is you cannot do this work by yourself as a principal or a school site leader. So you need other leaders in the work. And then it's also such a great opportunity to share the glory. Let other people shine. You just can't do it without them. I knew really quickly, like I can't do this alone as a principal. So I had built all these leaders, and it really helped. So I have this, I really love this quote, is if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So this is a picture of our leadership team, and I really invest a lot in our building the capacity through leadership. Leadership team is department heads and administrators. And this is the group of people at Washington that really made all of that magic happen. I just facilitated it. They're the ones who did the leading. But so we met at least once a month, would do lots of figure out our strategy and planning, and then they'd go out and implement with their departments. Okay, another important thing that I think is really important to talk about is the importance of supporting collective efficacy. So that's people working together. There's a lot of working in isolation. And so we need to figure out how to provide structures for teachers to work together. So the way we did that at Washington and the way we currently do that at Stevens is we give teachers time to collaborate. So we give them paid release days. And I found these are absolutely, absolutely invaluable. So I think, and the key in the leadership is to work with the department heads on the planning for these days. And then I would always come like the last maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes of the release day and say, tell me what you did today. So there was always a product. So every meeting, every release day is always about producing. We're not just talking, we're leaving with things. So you should have lesson plans, you should have data analyzed, but they need that time together. You should write test problems together. You should write lessons together. And this is like really part of where the magic happens. So we cannot achieve the things we're achieving by working in isolation. It takes a village. And the other thing to think about is, and I know we're talking about math, but when these things happen school-wide, it happens everywhere. You lift the game in science, you lift the game in history, that turns into also lifting the game in ELA and in math. All right, so another important thing is to create a culture of risk-taking. And what I learned really quickly when I became a principal is what you say and do matters. So I really try to make a point of modeling risk-taking. So I'll do something in front of them and I'll say, in front of the staff, let's say at a staff meeting, I'll say, I'm gonna try something. I've never tried this before, but I'm just gonna try this with you, so please be gracious with me. And I really learned really quickly that stuff mattered, that they like to see a principal who took risks, because it showed I really believe in taking risks. The other thing I would say to them is, especially when we shifted to the Common Core, is if I just see you doing the same old lesson from 10 or 12 years ago, I'm going to be really disappointed. But if I see you trying something new and falling on your face, I'm going to be thrilled. And that's because you're going to be trying something new and learning from it. So I don't want to see you falling on your face, but what I said is like, I'm going to be so excited you tried something new. So I think when you say those things, people are willing to take risks, and you need a risk-taking culture in order to look at data and to talk about data and to talk about your weaknesses and your strengths. So that all of that, I think I just want to kind of encourage school site leaders, and all of you in some way are a school site leader. So encourage this with your team. I also have a saying that I love, and it's called win, learn. There's no win, lose. It's win, learn. And those are the two options. The other thing I think that's important is that if you have a school-wide culture of risk-taking from the teachers and the staff, it trickles down to the students. So the students are ready to take risks as well, because they see their teachers taking risks. So the teachers will say, I'm going to try something new today. Whatever happens, I'm going to try my best. But if it doesn't go well, I'll get your feedback and I'll do it better next time. And then students see that this is how you grow. So I even have I had a teacher at Washington. She gave raffle tickets for students who got the answer wrong. And all they had to do was explain what they did wrong. And it just encouraged this whole culture of like, it's fine to be wrong as long as you learn from it. They literally got raffle tickets. Like, I've never seen someone do that. It was so cool. All right, so I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the state of the school. So this is something that we do as a school, and it happens every January and June. At the start of the year, department heads write real goals. Okay, you guys, what kind of goals? What kind of goals, you guys?
Real goals.
Real goals. Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone else. Am I just talking to Eric? Eric already knows this. What kind of goals, you guys?
Real goals.
And that's different than what kind of goals?
Fake goals?
Fake
goals?
Yes. A+. Everybody knows about fake goals. At some point in our life, we've written fake goals. These are real goals. So we sit down, we talk for weeks about these goals. We like really, really decide what are we going to focus on all year. And then the reason is because every January and June, the department heads have to stand up in front of everyone and say what progress they're making towards their goal. So you know how you put your goal on a little piece of paper and you send it to your boss and you're like, yay, done. That's not this. This is like real goals. So then they present their own data. They have total ownership over this data. It changes their whole sense of leading that group when they're responsible for that goal. They also write their goal at the top of every meeting agenda, because that should be the focus of everything you do, should be towards meeting those goals. Okay, and also at this is teachers. Oh, it's really fun. So teachers get to see and learn about and be inspired by what other teachers and departments are doing. So it created a massive amount of collective efficacy. So at the end of the last couple of years, we had, this is crazy, the science and the history department were working together because they had strategies that they saw that the other team was like, it was successful. And they're like, we want to learn more about that. They had their release day together. Everyone, science and history. Is this nuts? So it's just a really crazy thing. So people left inspired. We celebrated successes. We owned up when things weren't working. And then they said in front of everybody, this is our plan for what we're going to do better. And I really believe this is why we had all that success for all those years. And then something that's so important about State of the School is that I feel like we just on the grind and working so hard, and we need to take time to celebrate the successes. So this is actually the last State of the School that I had at Washington. We actually had like confetti cannons because the data was just so insane. We do like dances, talk about data. I mean, it's just crazy. It was so wonderful. And I think the thing I want to say, that's the hard thing that I want to say, is that if you don't have things to celebrate at your school, it's time for you to figure out how to change that. So you need to find things and focus on goals and make it happen, make it work, make it meaningful for everybody, and then celebrate the successes. And once people get tastes of that success, they just want more and more and more. And they're going to work and they're going to make it happen and they're going to get their students on board and it's going to rock. And that's it, everybody. That's all the answers.
Yeah, rock. I love it. Yay. Nice job, Megan. You know, when I talked to you, we did that interview earlier. When I talked to you, I was so inspired by the idea of risk-taking and the idea of collective ownership, that the department owns the responsibility and what they're doing, et cetera. That was so impressive. I really loved it. So
thank you. Can I just add on something to that? That's the teachers would say, like, they would say, oh, I need to turn in the data to you. Like, oh, I need to get the, and no, the department heads, like, I need to turn the data to you. And I said, no, the data is due to you. Like, you're leading the department. This is your data, not mine. And that's what switched everything. It was like, if it's mine, like, they're like, oh, I don't know, here's my data, good luck. But when they kept it, it's your data. You're going to present this to the staff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and nationally, they say that so many schools are actually looking at their data or turning in their data, if you will, and very few are actually doing something with their data. What is the message? What is the story that the data tell you, and how are you going to change things up so that you can actually improve the way that you've shown us? So this has been really impressive from all three of you. One of the things we're going to do next as an audience is to go to Mentimeter, and what I'd like you to do is to go in to this URL on your phone or your tablet or your computer and enter these numbers. You don't have to have the spaces in there, and put in what your questions are now that you've heard a little bit from the audience. What are your questions that you would like to ask? And we're going to collect those for just a few minutes, and then we'll come back and do some more conversation with the panelists based on what you want to hear. So I'm going to be quiet for maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look at the results. And by the way, if you want to see, once you've entered your information, if you want to see the live results, here's a URL where you can actually take a look at those. Okay, I'm going to jump over for just a second to the questions. So I think all of you have that. We're seeing some questions come in. That's good. Well, while you continue to type questions in, and feel free to do that, we'll refresh from time to time. What I'd like to do is get started with the conversation in these for the audience or with the panelists. And I guess one of the first ones is how is teaching with underserved children different than teaching with accelerated or with the SBAC typical students in your schools? And how are your strategies different? Eric, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. So I think I had mentioned it earlier. It's their learning environment. It's now limited to the walls of their home. They're in a certain space of their home that they actually might feel uncomfortable being in to learn. So there's a lot of distractions going on all around in their home, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And another thing is, during distance learning, I think something that we don't think about is what's going on with these students' families, right? There are parents who've lost their jobs, and students are aware of this. And so there's trauma that they are trying to kind of process while they are learning. So it's really important to address that with these students. So how can you expect these students to learn if that kind of trauma is there in the forefront? So how do we address that trauma with the students? That's why I do community building circles digitally with these students. That is why I build relationships with these students. And that's why I make the effort and really check in with these students. So again, and with these families, I think what we also need to keep in mind too is we are providing a free service of education to these families. And some of these students did not have internet in the beginning. So our schools had to provide them with hotspots, right? So how many of these how many of these students and families have working internet at home? How many of them have working devices at home? This is why we've given them and distributed Chromebooks to these students. But another layer on top of this is students are now having to get used to using their technology devices. And we as teachers have to teach them how to use these devices. So, and the reason why I'm saying that is because they don't have parents who, I would say many of them don't have parents who know how to navigate Chromebooks, who know how to navigate those technology devices. So we have to be their mentors in helping them navigate those devices.
It's
So,
almost like equity is much more than just the access to the broadband and the device. It's really about knowing how to use the device and make it do what you want it to do to solve your problems.
Right.
Oh, that is great. Melissa, do you want to jump in on that one about how it's different with underserved children?
Sure thing. So, working with underserved children, yes, absolutely echoing what Eric said, that there are, there are students that have less access to certain things, but I think that there's an element of flexibility that that we have with our students as we're building relationships and understanding, what, their situation is not the same as the student right next to them, but also with having flexibility, not changing our expectation of what is proficient, what good work looks like, and helping them to meet those goals and to set goals for themselves and to revisit that.
That's great. That's great. Well, let me go on to another question. The next one is about how often did your school review and plan the next steps around data? And maybe we could have Megan jump in on the school-wide perspective, but maybe have both teachers talk about it as well, because you're always looking at data. So Megan.
Yeah, no, Cheryl, you totally said it. This is just part of our regular practice. So we're constantly looking at data. I think what was really tricky that, Eric and I and the teachers here, the teacher leaders here, we had to sit down and figure out what are we going to measure right now. It's very tricky. So it's funny. It makes it really look easy now in the past because we did it all the time. What I'd like to say is you can't do this without having goals and looking at your data all the time and then making adjustments throughout the year and backwards planning like Eric was talking about. But we really had to think about we probably can't assess at the same level that we were last year because we're online now. Our pacing is slower. It just takes longer to get through. But so we had to say, what are we going to narrow this down to? We still have to look at things and figure out whether students are meeting the standards. And something that I really love the discussions we've been having is about how can we shift the focus about assessments from grading to feedback? Really thinking about assessments because we're like, how they can cheat, right? And they can, so we're like, well, how can then we make this meaningful? It's not about the grade. It's about you finding out, do you know how to do this or not? And then good, then I can make adjustments based on finding out that information.
Great. That's really insightful. Melissa or Eric, do you want to jump in on the data thing?
Sure thing. So I know that at Jefferson, where I work, we meet as a department once a month, but I actually meet with my partner teacher at grade level once a week. So we share the same conference period, and we talk a little bit every single day, even in the remote learning environment. We make sure that we plan and we see, okay, what worked in today's lesson, or what do you need to do next, and we kind of plan, even if it's something that maybe my students are struggling with and his students are doing well. I ask for help. Like, how do you think I could get them to understand this concept? How can I add this into maybe tomorrow's warm up so that I don't leave it alone? We're not done with that, right? We need to go back and we still need to learn it. The test doesn't, or the test or the quiz or whatever we took isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We have to make sure that we go back and learn those skills and add them in and revisit them.
Yes, Queen. Yes.
So let me move on to another question. One of the questions was how do you guys personalize your instruction? Eric, do you want to jump in on that one?
I'm thinking about that one. How do I personalize instruction?
I'm not sure what that means.
Right.
Well,
I don't know, like by student or differentiate? I don't know what that means.
It means a lot of things to a lot of people. You know, to a lot of people, it means how do you, personalizing is the sense of how do you take into account the students' interests and their strengths and their areas for growth. And so that it's not just one size fits all, but there really is some modification. So it's differentiation and individualization, but also what are your kids interested in? How do you get them motivated and engaged in order to learn?
Oh, that I can answer. So thank you for rephrasing that question. You know what? It comes down to the relationships that I have with my students. So I ask them all the time, what is it that they're interested in? What are their hobbies? And I include those experiences that they've shared with me and with their class. I include that in math. So whether it's embedded in a complex word problem for math, or whether it's included in a warm-up, or even as we transition to another activity, and I mentioned, okay, for those of you who are already done with their warm-up and are making their way into Nearpod, I just want to say kudos to so-and-so for sharing their story about what they did over the weekend, right? So I really try to get them interested. I really try to get them to feel like they are acknowledged. And I think that's something huge that we need to continue to do as teachers, really acknowledge these students, especially during distance learning.
Melissa, you're nodding your head.
Well, one of the things that I have some students, I actually teach both math and science. So I teach a core block. So sometimes, and I have them back to back. So sometimes in my break between my two classes, we'll talk about things that are completely off topic so that, you know, so I get to know them and we get to know what their likes are. And I found out what house from Harry Potter a lot of them are in, and all the different things that they like, and it really, I really like that time with them. So generally my Zoom lasts for the 2 hours, but that 10-minute passing period between my two classes, I'm able to visit with them and they're able to visit with each other. And I think that it's good to get to know them even in this fun virtual different learning. They're still getting to know each other and me, and I'm getting to know them.
Great. Let's turn the conversation to the scale grading that Megan was talking about. The question here is, how long did it take to get everyone on board? How much time did you give departments for planning? Was it weekly? How many paid planning days? And then there's another question that you might answer at the same time that's down in the lower right. That is your grading system similar to mastery learning? And do you give students the opportunity to redo assignments? So I don't know if those are same or different, but go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, lots of great questions. So I think this comes back to the risk-taking culture and trust and strategic implementation. So we have the head of research at the time was incredibly knowledgeable about the math and the reason why scaled grading was so much more effective than the old school grading. So he came and presented to our teachers. I just knew that was going to be the best, most effective way to get that done. And we did it immediately. So we had one meeting, and then I'd say within a week, everyone was signed up for scaled grading. So I do want to admit it's not like that easy. There were about 4 or 5 teachers who hadn't signed up for scaled grading yet. So I went and had individual conversations with them. It was just something I feel really passionately about in terms of equity for our students. I believe that zeros disproportionately impact students that are already marginalized, and we need to figure out ways to support them. Like, how many homework assignments do we need? And if there's 10 zeros, what is the purpose of that assignment, and why don't they know how to do it, and why aren't they doing that, and why aren't we having responsibility for that? So there's a lot of questions that we had to look at. I'm sorry, that got real serious real fast, huh? But that's what it's all about. But they found that they didn't get punished so much for a 0. I mean, imagine in our work, if we got punished for a 0, oh, guess what? You lost your day's pay. You were late on this assignment. You were late on turning in something, or you were late to the meeting. Like, imagine if we did this to each other the way that it happens with students. Mm-hmm. So super passionate about that. How much time did you guys, give departments for planning? Okay, so one of the first things I instituted is what I call a back-to-back department meeting. And we started that right off my first year. So we did that 6 straight years at Washington. And so departments have one meeting where they talk about the lesson and why they're teaching that lesson. They plan the lesson together. They might plan the formative assessment together. Then they give it, and then they come back the next meeting and talk about the data, talk about how it went, share the student work. And we did that process for years. And then now it's just kind of a natural thing that we're looking at how to use those 2 meetings. So at least 2 meetings a month. And then the paid planning days. So what was, I found out the cheapest way to do this was to give them release time, meaning, so instead of going to school, so this is what I find, you work what, 40 hours a week, which if you're a teacher, you're not working 40 hours, you're working like 50 or 60, right? So I think the last thing you have energy to do is stay until what, 8 at night or come on a Saturday or whatever. So I realized we just needed to release them for the day, get a sub. And I know it's time away and you have to really be strategic about this. But I think it's so important. It's so valuable. So they would take the day out of the classroom, get a substitute, and all meet at the school in the library and do the planning there. So that's how we did it. And then it's a lot more affordable just for people and leaders who are looking at their budget. And as far as mastery learning, I think that's kind of another level. That's not exactly what scaled grading is about. Scaled grading is really more about addressing the power of the 0 and how it's so disproportionately punitive. But mastery is something really interesting to look at. We studied grading a lot at Washington. I think, and I always talk about, like, there's 2 things that it's really like dangerous to talk about. And now I'll say 3 things, but grading, politics, and religion. So that's, these are not easy conversations, but mastery is something to look at. That's another thing. Sorry about the culture. Lots and lots of retakes, come try it again. Do it in a new way. It's not about, do you know it on that day? And then I would relate it to about teacher evaluations. Like if you can't do it on that day and I was like, that's done, you lose some of your paycheck or what, no, that's not what we say. We say, hey, you need a little work in this area. How can I support you? Here are some things. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Let's look at this again. Like it's all about growth. The whole school system needs to be about growth.
Great. Eric, can you talk about scale grading from a teacher perspective?
Sure. So I've been using scale grading since I was at Washington, since it was introduced to us. But kind of like what Megan had mentioned earlier, it's when these students realize that they're not getting punished for not understanding it right away is what really empowers them. So that opportunity to keep growing, to keep trying, is something that these students thrive off of. So I've had students, for example, who have received D's and F's and have received a lot of zeros throughout the time in elementary school or in middle school. But when it comes to scale grading, they're not getting those zeros. They're getting some points. But again, also in addition to scale grading, it, like what Megan just mentioned, is what are we doing to give students the opportunities to take these assignments again, to retake them, right? So that's something that we practice over at Washington, and that's something that we're doing here at our school now. But it's that shift in mindset, right? That's what we're trying to do with these students. So again, and Melissa mentioned it too, it's that growth mindset. Really, it's what we're getting them into that space with scale grading.
Well, thank you. Melissa, could you talk a little bit about what your class schedule looks like and how long are the asynchronous versus the synchronous opportunities? And what are the expectations for independent work?
Hi there. Okay, so like Nearpod, I'm also using something called Pear Deck. For me, I found that worked. It's very similar to Nearpod. And what's very cool about it is that I can see what everybody's doing, right? So I may give them a self-paced slideshow and have them go into breakout groups and work together. And I can see what slide everybody's on, what they're doing. So even if I'm not in that breakout group, I have my other screen open, I can see what they're doing. I know that they're working. I just personally preferred Pear Deck a little bit more than Nearpod, but they're both very similar. They have a lot of draw it tools, a lot of tools that I think are excellent for math. But again, my class, we change it up a little bit every day. So for example, today we worked in breakout groups on a self-paced Pear Deck. And what the students did, it was on our standard. I think we're in the same place there, Eric, where we're learning about ordering integers and rational numbers on a number line. So, so the students are working together, so I'm able to see that. But there are times when when it is paced by me, where the whole class we're working together and I could control the slides and we're all working on this one together. And then I have students present, share their screen, show what they did. And I try to look for multiple perspectives of the way that students are doing things, so that maybe if they didn't get it right the way that I would have shown it or taught it, if another student showed how to do it, I ask for them to share their work as well. As far as we work a lot collaboratively in my class. We have a 1 hour or 55 minutes of math, and then I have a 10-minute break, then 55 minutes of science with them. But I find that they really prefer to work together. At the very beginning, they kind of wanted to keep their cameras off, didn't really want to respond, but now they're really liking going into breakout groups. And I love that, like I said, with Pear Deck, that I can see what everybody's doing. I also used, I've also been using something, and I used it actually over the summer. I taught summer school. I used whiteboard.fi, which is another great digital tool where I can see what everybody's doing, which is very helpful to me, because if I see everybody making the same mistake, I can say, all right, close breakout rooms, let's come back together and let's talk about this problem. And I think that that's really helpful. So it's kind of a combination of I do, we do, and then they work independently, but not really independently. The we do is with each other.
Could you give us a sense of kind of what the week looks like for a typical math class? How often do you meet? How often is it asynchronous?
You know,
Well,
sorry. Go ahead.
We're actually meeting 5 days a week in Zoom.
Yeah.
We're meeting live. So, so part of the period, I allow them for some asynchronous work, so they're not having spent from 9 to 3:40 looking at their computers, having hours and hours of extra work to do later on. But we are live in Zoom from 9 to 9:55. So, or from the next class period. So we're in there together. So even if they're working asynchronously, they're still there and on, and maybe they have their camera off, maybe they're working independently on something, but they're there and I'm there to help them, so they can ask for help in the moment if needed.
Get it, Melissa, get it. You got to be alive as much as possible. If the students could learn this by themselves, they wouldn't need us to be there. So, we decided to go live all day, every day. And so same as what Melissa said, we might break out and do some independent work, but the teacher's there and is going to go into those breakout rooms and do individualized support. So it's all day.
Great. One last question here, and then we're going to jump into breakout rooms. And by the way, some people asked about the Flipgrid videos and also about the slides, and I'll contact the speakers separately. And if we can get those, we'll add them to the end of the slide deck that you have today, so that and give you a message that you can go back in and look at some new things. So the last question is about parents. What's the role of parents in advancing their child's learning in mathematics, and especially in this pandemic area where we're remote? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I'm happy to. I think I hope I'm not going to offend anyone when I say this, but in secondary, I think parents are great to be a part of the work, and they're great to have as partners. And in fact, we did, instead of a back to school night, we called it family night, and we spent the whole hour teaching parents how to get on Canvas and become observers and learn how to look at grades and support their students. But to be honest with you, I think the bulk of our time and energy goes towards working with the students and empowering them, because they're the person that's in front of us. So I know that's kind of, everybody has different philosophies about that, but that's just kind of a philosophy that I have about that.
Mm-hmm. Eric and Melissa, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Melissa. Sorry.
Well, I just absolutely, in teaching students to learn how to become their own advocate, to ask questions for themselves, for them to send me a message or an email versus their parents sending me the message or email. Because one of the things that I just really value, especially as they begin middle school, is for them to, to take ownership, for them to be a little bit more independent. And I think that's what really helps them. And as far as reaching out to parents, I just like to have like a personal touch and just do phone calls and things like that. But really, it's more like Eric had said earlier, to a positive shout out. Hey, your kid's been doing great. Ask them about it. Ask them about what they did. So hopefully what I'm doing in that sense is that these children are speaking with their parents about what they're doing well and what are their areas of need and things like that versus the you failed whatever. It's more of a hey, you know what? Got a chance to do some quiz corrections and I was able to improve my score or whatever it was. But teaching the kids to be their own advocate is most important.
Great.
Yep. Ditto to everything that Melissa said. But in addition to that, I do want to add on and let you guys know too that yes, I always empower my students to be their own advocates, but more importantly, I empower my students to empower each other. So I really encourage my students, when you hear students participate, when they are answering, please nod your heads. And these students thrive off of that. They will see each other nodding at each other and they will feel really good about that. And that's where that's also a way for them to really get them to collaborate, right? They become comfortable with one another. So really empowering students to empower each other is also a good way to get them pumped up.
Melissa's a really good nodder, by the way. Yeah, I always, in my staff meetings, I just look and like whoever's nodding, I'll just look at them because I'm like, they're getting it. Just keep going. But Melissa, you've been nodding. Thank you. You're very supportive.
That's great. Good. Well, thank you for all this conversation. We're going to continue that in breakouts. Is Rosa there?
I sure am.
Oh, yay. You're my lifeline, Rosa. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I think there's 15 people in this, so maybe we could do 4 or 5 people in a room, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
And we'll be in the rooms for, why don't we do 10 minutes instead of 15? Let me think, can we do 15? Yeah, we can do 15. So let's do about 15 minutes in the breakouts and then we'll come back. What we'd like to do is to have you guys talk about what you heard from the panelists, what really resonated with you, what you're gonna take back to your school. And we'd also like you to have a spokesperson in the room so that when we say, let's have a shout out or a report from group 1 that you'll know who's doing that. So go ahead, Rosa. I don't know if there's any direction or if you just put us in there.
No, so you'll get an invitation for a breakout room. Please accept the breakout rooms. And for all of the co-hosts, there's a function on your screen that tells you that you're ready to leave or that you have a question. And then I'll move you to the next breakout room.
Okay, sounds good. So there should be a thing that says join your breakout room. So go ahead and click on that. There we go. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had as great a conversation as we did in our classrooms or our breakout sessions. They were really terrific. And what we're going to do real quickly is take a look at or have a spokesperson from each breakout do a quick little breakout for us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out where that is. And I'd like those people to kind of come on camera and do that. So we were with Octavio. Do you mind if starting?
Sure, no problem. I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name's Octavio Villagomez. I am the Bills coach at Edison Middle School. And what we discussed, some of the things that resonated with me as an old math teacher and now a Bills coach, was the focus on scaled grading. At our school, we call it Mastery Grading and Learning in LA Unified, but the concept is the same, which is focused on student achievement and developing those math skills as opposed to focusing on like the collection of points. I know as an old math teacher, it's very easy to get caught up into that pattern where you're just focused on, or the students are focused on turning in work to get points so they can fall in a certain percentile so they can get an A, B, or C. So we're trying at our school to shift that focus where having our teachers come up with a few learning targets, teach those well, giving students multiple opportunities to master and demonstrate the mastery of those learning targets, and then grading them on that. So it's not really an average per se. So if a student maybe on the first 2-3 attempts scores low, a 1 or 2, but by the end, on the last 2 or 3 of similar type assignments, they're scoring better, than that would be more indicative of their grade. And then the other thing that resonated with me as well was the the talk around common assessments and data. That's another thing at our school that we're trying to push, which is having teachers come up with common assessments that they can then bring back to their department meetings and discuss those results of that student work, and then use that to plan future lessons and address those areas of need that they found in those common assessments.
Great. Nice job.
Yeah, Tobio, good job.
Thank you.
How about, let's go to breakout room 1. Salvador was in there. Are you the spokesperson or somebody else from your session?
Sure, I'd love to speak.
Great. Hi.
I'd love to just really acknowledge the team, Eric, Melissa, and Megan. I was so inspired. That is such a great presentation. You guys are awesome. I love your passion. I love the work that you did, and I can see how much you love the school and the students there. So thank you. As far as the school, school-wide, what I'm taking away and what I'd like to bring back to the school is just that high expectations that you have, that rigor, that John Muir is a low-income community, but there is this pobrecito syndrome that kind of permeates not just the teachers or students, just everybody, right? And we want to set the bar high, and I love that you don't take any excuses about what's going on in the community, but you're doing community building, that you're building leaders among the staff, that you're really empowering everyone so that it goes down to the teachers and then the teachers to the students. As far as math, I love your talk about, expecting a lot of language, a lot of explanation from the kids, not just getting to the answer, but really giving them opportunities to discuss the process. I love the reward, the mistakes, providing raffles as long as they can explain what their reasoning is. That's just such a good way to turn things around, right? What we don't expect for us to do, and it's just, I know that it's going to work. I love the goal setting. I love your sheet, Eric, with helping kids how to set their goals by looking at their student dashboard. So those are some of the things that I'm definitely going to bring back to John Muir.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice job.
Hey, Salvador. Woo!
How about number 3, which I think Leo was in? So are you the
Yeah,
spokesperson?
I'm gonna do the reporting. So it was Leah and Melissa and I. It was a great conversation. One of the things that I did check in with them is that regardless of how difficult this time period is, we did talk about the fact that a lot of things in terms of technology tools, we're not going to go back. And they are going to keep using a lot of the tools, the Jamboards, the Pear Deck, and despite the technical difficulties that they encountered, they do see themselves continuing to use these because they do lend themselves to creating that class environment that is beneficial. We also talked about the kind of discrepancies in terms of the amount of time that students were working directly with the teacher. That's a challenge, and that's something that the district has had to adjust. And it's mainly driven by the connectivity and the fact that households have more than one student that's logging on. So that if they're both on at the same time, creates some challenges. So that's just, underscore the reality of what our students are going through. And we did talk about kind of the role of parents, and parents not necessarily being the ones that are walking the kids through the problems and solving them, but just them being aware of what their role is in terms of helping develop a growth mindset, and in terms of understanding that in the school culture is encouraging them to make mistakes and to try new things, and which is more than likely something very different than what they experience. So for them to understand that it's okay and that they encourage their students and reinforce that message is also very important. So overall, it was a great conversation, and I echo Salvador's comments about the panel being fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Nice job, group 3. All right. And the last group is group 4. Casey was in there. Are you the spokesperson?
I don't know. I don't know.
You
if I was
want to
supposed
be?
You're now,
You
Or
guys-
now,
You're now. Jump in,
I
girl.
am now. Okay, why not? We had a lot of we had some good conversation. I was just reflecting on the fact that at our school, there's a lot of these things that we're hearing that there's pieces of it that we've already started. And so it was just reaffirming to me. I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. I did mention how and Eric agreed with me. It was like last year we were going through we started cycles of inquiry. We were focusing on focus standards, and my principal was like, "Oh, I can't wait to see that the state scores. Did it make a difference?" And then COVID hit, so it was like this. We didn't get to see the result of our hard work, and we had all these great ideas. And this year it's kind of fallen flat on its face with everything going on and the different struggles. But it was not, it was really nice to hear that, and we've already talked to Leah Aldridge is actually my colleague. So she's already started the conversation about scaled grading, and we've already tried to move to scaled scoring on our assessments. So we're headed that direction. So trying to get others on board is still a challenge, but we're working towards it.
Yeah, we were totally having that conversation in March, ready to start this next year, and then COVID.
It was
And we're
brutal.
like,
It was
there's too
brutal.
much change that we can't.
Had
Plus,
a lot of momentum that got hit real hard.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, you all. Yes.
Well, nice job, Casey.
Yay, Casey. Woo!
Okay. One last thing I'd like to do is to turn the conversation back to the panelists. You've shared so much. It's been so fabulous. We'd like to give you 1 minute each to kind of summarize or give a piece of advice or make a comment today. So let's have Melissa go first. 1 minute.
Okay, well, I guess in closing, I think that scaled grading is a big thing, and giving those kids the confidence that they need to meet high expectations. We don't need to see so many zeros. I think I think that they all deserve that Thanksgiving dinner score, and they're going to get there.
That's great. Thank you. Eric, how about you? Your 1 minute.
You know what? I just really want to say that despite all the challenges that we may be facing, I would just say, please always remember your why in your work. Be grounded in that why. Remember that we are doing this for our students. We're doing this for our community. So I think we need to do that.
Great. And Megan, we'll get you out of here by 5.
Yay. Okay. Not that I don't want to be here with you guys. I love it. I just told her I had to leave at 5. It's really hard to summarize. I think it's build the capacity of everybody you can strategically. You can't, right? You need to strategically build it with a certain amount of people and then trust them to build it with their teams. So share the leadership, share the glory, high expectations, always strive for excellence, no matter what the challenges are. And I look at challenges as opportunities. And I think I'm really proud of the teachers here at Stevens this year. They're really rising to this challenge. And it was funny, the question about what does the week look like? And I was like, we're just here all day, every day, working our butts off is what's happening, because we can't let the opportunity gap increase any more than it already was before we started. So we just have to be fearless, and we have to be tireless and never give up and continue to believe and know that our students can do great, great things. And it's very, very challenging right now, but they can do it and we can do it, and we're going to get through this, and we'll probably be better for it. But ask me that in April or May.
Well, thank you. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am so inspired by what Megan, Eric, and Melissa have shared today. Let's give them a round of applause. It was great. And I'm going to turn this back to Augustine. We have actually 2 minutes left. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I want to echo your sentiment and really, I'm so excited that we were able to share this talent and expertise from our own network of colleagues and schools. And, you know, you always hear about all the difficulties. And I think we need to really showcase the successes a lot more. And I think there's just great things going on. And you know, that just motivates and inspires more greatness. So thank you very much to the whole team that helped put this together. I am sharing a link to a quick survey for those of you to, you know, just tell us a little bit more about, you know, what you want to see. We're going to have at least one more session that focuses on math and trying to make it as practical as possible, so that we're helping you in these times. So just take a few minutes to do that. Thank you to our panelists.